is being viewed from around the world. I shall be trying to make sure that it's recorded, and if you don't like it being recorded, take your picture off. We will try and transmit also via YouTube so that people who can sign in, who can't get in, they can see it from there. Okay. I've enabled all of you at the moment to be able to unmute yourself. But what I will do for the time being, I'm going to mute everybody, and I would request if people would keep themselves muted, because we can hear lots of noise in the background, and I'll bring you in accordingly. All right? Is that fine with everybody?
Yes, yes.
So I'm going to mute everybody.
Yeah, we ain't got a bin out yet.
Yeah, I'm going to mute everybody.
Mukesh, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, somebody's been playing with me, including myself. Okay.
Sorry, Mukesh, that was me.
Yeah. Okay. See, you got brilliant people who can do this sort of thing. So Raj, I'm going to unmute you first, so that you can get in. And the only thing I would say to everybody is that if we find anybody being very disruptive, we will put them straight into the waiting room. Okay. And we'll leave them there because we know that in these type of meetings, people can be very disruptive. Okay. So Raj, I'm going to hand over to you now. And if you could do the honors, and then I'm going to remain quiet, except when we're doing any handovers or once Manjeet and Ghuram are up when they finish themselves. Okay, over to you, Raj.
Okay, thank you, Mukesh, Chair. Let me welcome everyone to this Zoom meeting on a very important subject of Indian farmers' struggles. And I think it's getting to a time now, it's going to be very critical what happens here on. I think some of the speakers will touch on what they think about where we should be going, other than some of the speakers touching on the human rights violations and what the trade union can do collectively, not just the farmers movement in India, but trade union movement in UK and internationally. So what I will do, I'm going to introduce the two hosts will be the main principal people taking in charge. But I will come in time to time when some people come in and they want to express fraternal greetings from the trade unions. So I will introduce them from time to time during the meeting, because they're not going to be all at once. So let me now introduce the two hosts, which is Manjeet Singh and Gurnam Singh. Now, they will give their profile, what their background is, before they commence speaking. And obviously, if you got questions to ask, it would be convenient if you put them on the chat and the chair or the host be able to pick them up, because meetings sometimes can go on and speakers can go on. If the questions are there, then they can be dealt with. And we want to ensure that all the members, if you've got questions, are heard and their questions are answered. So, okay, I'm going to introduce the two hosts. It's Manjeet Singh and Gurnam Singh. So over to you guys for you to run the meeting.
Anji.
Okay,
Thank
Manjeet,
you
you're
very much.
muted, and that's it. Wonderful. And Gurnam, you're unmuted as well.
Okay, so I'll just quickly respond. Thank you, Raj, and thank you, Mukesh, and thank you, Unite. I think the work that you're doing is phenomenal and really trailblazing. So I'd like to just pay homage to that. I also want to thank everybody who's joining us today. Over 66 people from around the world, which again I think just shows the depth and strength of kind of concern for what's happening. You know, we've got Preet, we've got MPs, we've got activists, we've got academics, we've got a whole range of people. So hopefully this can be a really meaningful event. I'm just going to say one thing and then I'll hand over to Manjeet, then he can do his stuff. So I'm an academic activist. I also do work in the media and I've been, you know, writing quite a lot about what's happening at the moment. And one of the things that's really concerning me, which people might want to touch on, is that whilst this struggle, this movement began as a farmers movement, and it still very much is, and also it's a workers movement, Mazdoor. What's happened is that the government of India is now portraying it as some kind of anti-nationalist movement, and there was, because we had two events in different parliaments, one in the British Parliament, Preet will know about that, but there was also in the Indian Parliament, Narendra Modi spoke, and I just want to tell you what he said, because this is more than just a farmers movement now. It's actually a human rights movement. In fact, this is what he said. He said that this movement is mushrooming a new breed of, and this is the word he used, Andolan Jivi professional protesters. Now, Andolan Jivi means parasites. So he's using this notion of these people are parasites. And he's making oblique references to them being extremists and foreign, kind of Khalistanis and things. So this is the language that we saw in kind of Nazi Germany, and it's a language that's deployed by lots of different regimes that are undemocratic. Any political opposition, we saw what happened to Disha Ravi and her arrest, and a whole lot of other things. And we've got writers like Naomi Klein, we've got whole kinds of people, human rights activists who are coming on board. So in some senses, this movement is much bigger than the farmers movement now. And I think that's something that will be really useful to pick up in today's event, because I think what connects us all is our absolute commitment to human rights. I think that above anything else. Hanji, we'll go over to Baji now. Manjeet, to say Hanji.
Hanji, Sat Sri Akal and hello, how are you? My name is Manjeet Singh Buttar, and I'm a JP as well. And I have been working for International Human Rights Organization since 1987. I was a General Secretary from Singh Sabha, Southall, and also a counselor. And I have been very active for farmers movement. I have grave concerns what's happening over there. Our relations are sitting near Delhi. So I leave it there. And Gurnam Singh ji, I think Preet has to leave by latest 35 past. So I think we will bring Preet. So
yeah, definitely.
Preet, please.
So can I just briefly introduce Preet? I don't think we have time to give her full CV, and she can fill in any gaps as well. But she is the MP for Edgbaston, Labour MP for Edgbaston in Birmingham. She's also the Shadow Secretary of State for International Development. And if that's right, Preet, one of the reasons why you were not able to participate in the debate in Parliament is because of your shadow front bench status, because some people have been making allegations that why isn't Preet there? You might want to clear that up, but over to you. You've got 10 minutes.
Thank you so much, Gurnam, and you're absolutely right. Being on the front bench means that I am not able to speak in the House of Commons on any other matters other than my own brief. And as frustrating as that is, it hasn't stopped me from speaking up about the farmers' protest, because as you know, I've done my own videos, but written letters to Dominic Raab and Boris Johnson, but also in my role as Shadow Development Secretary, and some of the things that I want to talk about today. And I just want to say thank you so much to Unite, to Manjeet Singh Buttar, to Raj, to Gurnam Singh and Mukesh for inviting me to speak today. Since September last year, when the Indian government introduced three new laws to deregulate India's vast agricultural sector, I believe what we have all become to see is one of the largest and the greatest protests in human history. 4 out of 10 Indians work as farmers, and agriculture more widely employs half of the country. In a country of over 1 billion people, this issue directly affects, quite literally, hundreds of millions of people there and their families around the world. British people have a proud history of stepping up and supporting people who are suffering or are having their rights curtailed. And in this moment, we owe this solidarity to the Indian people and essentially the farmers. We will have all seen the images of the farmers in their tens of thousands marching from their homesteads to the Indian capital to peacefully protest against these laws, and the incredible images of Sikh women making a sea of orange, sitting in protest in the camps on the Delhi border. This is now getting on for 6 months since these laws were introduced. And in January, the government and farmers completed an 11th round of talks without resolution. And in the meantime, dozens of protesters have died in the camps surrounding the capital, often going hungry and chilled by the cold. The Indian authorities have retaliated with a heavy hand. We've all seen the reports and the footage of the police brutality used against peaceful protesters in New Delhi, the water cannons, the tear gas used to disperse crowds, and alarming footage of state police beating elderly farmers with batons. And in recent months, the Associated Press has reported an escalation in the use of silencing tactics by the Indian authorities, which have included detaining journalists and freezing social media accounts. At least 9 journalists have been charged in recent weeks for covering the protests. And early in February, an internet blackout was ordered in New Delhi, and some activists have been arrested for posting support for the protests on social media. This past year, during the pandemic, under the pretext of COVID-19, we have seen an alarming rise in the use of restrictions which inhibit or even outlaw peaceful association around the world. And this is a grave threat to the freedom to protest and organize, and it must be resisted and called out wherever it may occur. In a positive move last year was also the first time that regional bodies and the UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Assembly and Association issued a joint declaration on the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and democratic governance. This clearly outlines that states must pursue an approach based upon the principle that freedom of peaceful assembly is a fundamental human right. That doesn't just mean that freedom must be protected, but it means it must be actively promoted, that the states actually have a role to play in proactively encouraging freedom of peaceful assembly, allowing individuals to express their views and brokering constructive civil engagement. This is not only an important right for its own sake, but it's also a fundamental tenet by which governments make better policies and make better laws. Listening to people and working with them to shape the decisions which impact them is the greatest duty of any government, not least during a crisis as great as the coronavirus pandemic. I have a personal connection here because, of course, my family originated and migrated from the Punjab. My father moved here to England when he was 15 years of age, and he belonged to a farmer family and was a farmer in the Punjab like the rest of his family was. So I know how difficult it was for my family to make a living back then, and especially for older workers who really struggled in the winter months. And seeing them now out on the streets, making their voices heard, is incredibly positive, or should be, if not for my fear for how they might be treated by the state. But of course, we can't let fear stop us. If people are not visible and they do not demand to be heard, then politicians will overlook them. That's why the whole world is now talking about the scenes in New Delhi that we've seen on the news of those peaceful protesters being prevented from gathering with barricades and barbed wire, or brutalized with the use of water cannons and tear gas. It is an injustice that no right-minded, free-thinking person can absolutely ignore. And in my role as Shadow Secretary of State for International Development for the Labour Party in the United Kingdom, I know the precarious situation facing people around the world. More than 1.5 million people have lost their lives as a result of the pandemic, with nearly 160,000 of them in India, and the wider impacts of this crisis are likely to harm so many more. Global extreme poverty rose in 2020 for the first time in 20 years, with the pandemic estimated to push as many as 200 million people into extreme poverty by 2030. In India, the farmers face incredible hardship. Every year, they face extreme risks, such as weather events, including low rainfall, cyclones, price volatility, rising debts, and the past year is no different in this regard. But with the pandemic putting additional pressure on the systems they rely on, the impacts of these events on farmers has absolutely been severe. And in many instances, efforts by governments to limit the spread of the novel coronavirus have actually exacerbated the difficulties for agricultural workers. From access to seeds right the way through customer demand, and especially so for the 120 million smallholders with limited ability to absorb these shocks. And for those who are employed informally and who rely on daily earnings without contracted work, this year has been tougher still. Earlier this year, the International Labour Organization estimated that around 400 million people working in the informal economy in India are at risk of falling deeper into poverty. During the week of International Women's Day, and in which I and my colleague Yasmin Qureshi launched Labour's Gender Equality Development.
Preet, you've gone quiet. Can you just unmute yourself?
We lost the sound.
And again, you've gone quiet again.
During the
Yeah.
week,
Yeah, that's fine.
apologies.
You got 2 minutes, by the way.
I'm nearly done. During the week of International Women's Day, and in which I and my colleague Yasmin Qureshi have launched Labour's Gender Equality in Development consultation, it would be remiss of me not to point out that many of these workers will be women. And even before the pandemic, most economically active women in the country were informal workers in low-paid sectors, and thus not included in official labour statistics. So according to Oxfam, 80% of the economically active women in India are employed informally in the agriculture sector. And faced with these challenges, it is even more vitally important that policymakers find ways to adapt and build greater resilience to limit the damage future disasters may cause. And integral to this will be addressing the vast poverty and inequalities which have been highlighted and exacerbated by this pandemic. Tackling these huge defining issues of our age will require all of us to work together. And this means giving people at the sharp end of this crisis the space to express their views. And that's why events like this are so important. In the labour movement and across unions everywhere, we all have a duty to stand up for the right to peaceful protest, freedom of assembly and association. To stand for anything less means a race to the bottom for workers everywhere. And we don't accept the abuse and brutality farmers have suffered for standing up for themselves, and the shocking scene of an effigy of climate activist Greta Thunberg being burnt on a stake, the young activists like Disha Ravi who've been arrested just for posting their support and sharing protest ideas on social media. A social movement as great as the farmers' protest, one of the largest protests in human history, will not simply be silenced. Boris Johnson might not be paying attention when he confused the farmers' protest with the Kashmir conflict in Prime Minister's questions in December. But in the UK, we will continue to speak up until he does. The farmers have our solidarity, and I want to thank everyone on this call for giving up their time on this very important issue. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Preet, for that very focused and very kind of precise analysis of what's happening. I know that you have to leave as well, but I just wanted to ask you to maybe say something about one issue which, I mean, the role of women. We've been celebrating International Women's Day this week, and they're estimating that on the board, on the 3 sites, that there were in total maybe nearly 250,000 women participating. All the speeches were made by women. So in some sense, this is a feminist movement as well. Now it's a women's liberation movement. And what would you say to women across the world who are fighting for women's rights and they need to support this movement? You know,
I think that's a great question. I mean, it's been wonderful to see so many women, as you said, millions, you know, at the borders, at the forefront, not just women like mothers, but actually young girls that are there too, and showing that kind of sense of solidarity. And I think it's so important that despite seeing the effigies of Greta Thunberg, despite the sort of attacks that Rihanna faced, what I want to say is we need to see more social movements. We need to see more female social activists. Don't be put off about the disproportionate attacks that women face, because of course, when we put our heads above the parapet, when we speak out, we are being attacked disproportionately compared to our male counterparts. And I would say, you know what, rise above that. If we do not use our voices in democracies, we will never be able to affect change. So I think we should feel inspired by social movements like this.
okay, so thanks a lot, Preet. Stay with us as much as you can. And I'm going to hand over to Manjeet now, because we've got some fantastic speakers from India and he's going to introduce them. Manjeet.
Yeah. Thank you, Preet. Now we have Mahinder Singh Garewal. He is advocate and he is the General Secretary of the International Human Rights Organization. He has got a lot of experience working as a General Secretary. He was an investigation secretary before. So he has been somewhere like from 86, 87. I like to invite Mahinder to speak on the violation of human rights and freedom of press. Yeah,
Can you unmute yourself,
You-
Mahinderji?
Yeah. If you can unmute yourself, please, Mahinder. That go. Okay, you're wonderful.
Yeah.
You're there.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I would like to say that the first speaker, Ms. Preet Kaur Gill, has in very clear terms said what is required from the governments, what is expected from the governments in the context of human rights. She has also touched a few things which is happening in Delhi and around it. So I will be discussing more of what is happening in reality so that we can see what is expected and what is happening in reality. The farmers in India are sitting in protest against the 3 farm laws, which they consider, not only they, most of the world thinks are against the rights of the farmers, which will be ruining them. And the farmers are sitting in protest against those laws for about 6 months from now. First, from the September end, they were sitting in Punjab and Haryana mainly. But when they saw that the government is not listening to the demands and not acting accordingly, they thought of shifting their protest to Delhi, the capital of India, so that it will create more effect on the government. And there was a possibility that in that context, they will be listening to them and doing the rightful. But in the process, when they started moving from Punjab and Haryana towards Delhi, at first in Haryana, which is also ruled by the BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, which is also ruling the national government, they were stopped at various places. Barricades were placed when everybody knew that they are going only to hold a peaceful protest at Delhi. In that condition also, they were stopped in Haryana at many places. Barricades were placed, and then when the people tried to cross those barricades, they were showered with stick blows, which is called as cane charging. Then water cannons were used. Roads were dug up so that they cannot cross and go ahead. In these circumstances, still the farmers went ahead. And in a time of about 24 hours, they reached Delhi, which otherwise takes only about 4 or 5 hours from Ludhiana or Khanna to reach Delhi. They took more than 1 day to reach the borders of Delhi because they were stopped and cane charged and water cannons were used at various places. And when they reached the borders of Delhi, they were stopped at that place also. At their place, there was much more police enforcement, and the farmers thought that it is not good to fight with them everywhere. So finally, they settled at the borders of Delhi. And now it is about 3.5 months from the end of November. They are sitting on the borders of Delhi. The whole story is a story of denial of basic human rights to these peoples who are sitting there in protest against these farm laws. They are sleeping in the trolleys, tractor trolleys, or even under them. They are sleeping in makeshift tents and very shabby structures temporarily constructed over there, without any toilet and bathing facilities, without any medical facilities. People are in hundreds of thousands, and many of them are old age. There are many women and there are children also, and they have faced the severe winters of India, the main December and January, which are the coldest months of India. They have suffered those months in suffering in those open. They have also suffered when the rains, the temporary and shabby settlements where they are sitting, they were leaking. In the cold, they were wet, their clothes were wet, but still they were sitting, and the government was not affected by that. In this process, what happened then next? There was a main thing on the 26th of January, which is the Republic Day of India. On that day, the farmers started a tractor rally. They wanted to take out a tractor rally within the Delhi city. There was no harm in allowing the people to go to the places where they wanted, because they had already seen when they have been sitting on the borders, they were sitting very peacefully. And they had assured that this rally would also be very much peaceful. So there was no harm in allowing a peaceful protest rally to be held within the inner portion of Delhi. But the police didn't allow them to go on the routes which were demanded by them. Even the Supreme Court had said that they had no objection in allowing them to hold this rally. But the police did not allow them to go on the roads as demanded by them, and gave them alternate routes, which were considered to be in the less populated outer portions of Delhi. And most of the farmers were not willing to go on those routes because they were comparatively less populated and less people would be able to see the rally. But the government insisted that they will not be allowed to go on the inner roads. So the farmer union leaders had to accept the decision of the government. In this case, what happened was that some farmers wanted to go inside. Others peacefully went on the roads which were allotted by the police. So this created a confusion. Secondly, the administration also helped to create some confusion. They put some blockades on the routes that were firstly allotted to the farmers for the rally. So some tractors went on the other roads which were not allowed. Some went with their own choice. Some were forced or rather mistakenly went there. So on those roads, there was some violence because there were barricades on those roads. And when the farmers tried to remove them and go ahead, they were again cane charged over there. The water cannons were used, tear gas shells were used. Even the main bad thing was that the tear gas shells were fired directly on the farmers. They were given very stick blows. Many people were injured in that. Many people were arrested. And there are some people who are still missing. Their whereabouts are not known, where they have gone after them. Even one person, Navdeep Singh, was killed in that process. Now what happened? That the government says that that person died due to accident of the tractor. But the farmers and his family allege that he was not killed in an accident. The accident happened because that person was hit by a tear gas shell directly. After being hit by the tear gas shell, he lost control over his vehicle, which caused the accident. And what the journalists who said that the accident hit by a bullet or a tear gas shells, even they were not spared by the government. When the government, the police arrested a number of people from that place, they also filed some cases against some very important journalists. More than 6 journalists were filed under these cases who said that that person had died due to being hit by the tear gas shell. This is a very great attack on the freedom of press. Though they should not have been filed in such cases. It is their right to say whatever they think proper. Other than the newspaper journalists, one journalist, the editor of wire internet news, and that is an wire is a news website. The editor, Mr. Siddharth Vardarajan, was also filed under a case. So this was the thing that happened about the people who reported correctly about the affairs of the 26th January. And they didn't stop at this also. After that also some journalists were rounded up. They were rounded up on the 30th of January, simply because they were interrogating some persons who were guilty of throwing stones and fire bombs on the farmers' camps at Singhu border. And it was suspected that this was done not by the local people as asserted by the administration, but by the goons belonging to the ruling party BJP and its allies, the RSS. And they were escorted and supported by the police. And the people, those journalists were investigating from them as to the reality of the incident, what happened at that place. They were arrested by the police. And at that time, they were also inquiring about those persons who were hit by the policemen because they attempted to stop those persons from setting the camps where women were staying and the langar camps tents from where food was served to the people. Those people were also hit by the police. And on the other hand, they did not arrest any person who had come to attack those people, but they arrested and beat up the persons who tried to defend, to check them from setting those camps on fire. Those two journalists were picked up from there. One was Dharmender Singh and other was Mr. Punia. Dharmender was let off the next day and Punia was sent to the 14-day remand, judicial remand, though he got a bail after some days. Not only that, the police after the 26th of January also started raiding the people in Punjab who they assumed had gone to that tractor parade. There is one agency that is known as National Investigation Agency, which is a police, super police, we can say, which does not require to get the permission of any state from where it wants to arrest people.
I'm sorry to
They
interrupt you,
issued-
Mahinder, but could you give you a minute if you can start summing up, because otherwise we'll run out of time.
Okay.
Yes,
And
I
also-
will take about 3 or 4 minutes more.
Mahinder, just one other thing.
they are-
Just one other thing while you, because I think,
It's 1 minute, not 3 minutes, please.
1 minute, okay.
but also that I think you've given
Mukesh,
some
we need to
detail.
give him
No
2 minutes.
problem. I will sum up the rest. No
But just-
problem.
I've got a question for you. If you can just answer the question, please. You're saying that all these agencies are acting illegally. They're doing things to harass protesters and activists. Now, are they acting on their own, or are they under the command of Modi? Because Modi might be, what's actually happening? Is it anarchy, or is it?
Actually, these agencies are controlled by the central government. They
So the
don't
orders are
need
coming
any
from the
permission
top.
from the state governments where they are acting.
And the
So it
police
can be
as
very
well.
easily assumed that they are working under the command of Modi.
Okay.
Similarly, not only the police, they are also using the enforcement department of the income tax to harass people who support the farmers' movements.
Hmm.
This is the main thing. Then when we go ahead of this, the government at this moment also, instead of listening to the demands of the farmers, they are creating more hurdles for them. They are erecting more barricades. They are putting spikes, metal spikes on the roads. Just like there was some, the old times, there were punji sticks were used in the wars that have been banned by the UN now. They can't be used even in the wars. Now
Minda,
at the moment,
we're gonna have to finish now because your time is now up. If you want to just say one last sentence, yeah?
Yeah.
Akhri
yes, last I would
sentence,
like to only say that the intolerance of the government is so much that in the previous few days, the UK Parliament discussed the human rights of the farmers in the parliament.
Okay.
The effect of that was that the Indian government called the US High Commissioner in Delhi and told him that we are annoyed at this, you shouldn't have done. This
Okay,
is the
Mr.
height
G.
of.
Okay, we're going to have to round you up there. Thank Manjeet, back to you for the
Hanji.
next speaker.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manjeet, very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Majid,
Thank you.
Mahinder, thank you. I believe you are going to stay because there may be questions later on. We have a half an hour session at the end for questions.
Yes, I'm very much here.
Manjeet, just before you
Majid,
go.
Majid, just 1 second. I know Priti, she would have to go off. I did put a question in the chat, if you would answer that. And there's one comrade who come on from the RMT, Glenn Roy. He has to go off in 5 minutes. Could we give him 1 minute just to bring greeting from his branch?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So
is-
maybe Preet can answer that.
Is the MP still here?
Preet, are you still with us? That Keir Starmer's position, he seems to be a bit quiet on this issue. Can you just clarify the official Labour Party position?
I think he's not there, is he?
He's maybe not there, yeah?
I think Pretty's gone on a call. She was taking a call at the
Okay.
time.
So do you want to get that? What was
Okay,
his
could
name,
I,
Raj?
Glenn Roy,
Yeah.
Glenn Roy, are you there?
Sat Sri Akal. Greetings, everyone.
Sri Akal.
Just to quickly give our solidarity greetings. I'm a member of the Railway Union in London, in the UK, and we have another meeting. I have another meeting, but there are other members of the RMT on here that I've noticed. So I leave them in your capable hands. But just to say, solidarity with the work that is being done in India. The production of food is the production and maintenance of life. And those who don't understand that are doing these things deliberately. And we should recognize that and act in solidarity with our farmers, comrade in India. And I give you the assurance that the RMT is very much behind you. Solidarity, comrades. Solidarity.
Thank you.
Manjeet, over to you to introduce our next speaker.
Yeah, Glenn Roy was very well known in the London Underground and very active. Our next speaker is Sanjeet Toor. She writes for The Wire and also Trolley Times. And she has been at the border, Singhu border, since this started. And she is very active, like going forward and organizing things. So I would like to invite Sanjeet.
Thank you, Manjeet, and thank you everyone for listening to us and showing solidarity for the protests going on here.
You have 13 minutes to speak.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. I'm gonna speak on, as it was told to me, about how the laws are gonna impact women and somewhat the participation of women too in the protests here. So ever since September, when the first protest happened under the unions, when they came under one ambit, I have been going to those protests, and I was just an observer. I just wanted to see how women have been participating and how what the laws were actually. And that brought me more closer to how the laws are gonna be taking us back to the colonial times. I was not a writer before that as such, but I wanted to read the stories of the people as those were unfolding. But nobody wrote those stories because the media didn't come to Punjab before we went to Delhi. So I wrote the stories I wanted to read. And I pitched them to Wire and Carvaan. So these days I'm writing for them longer essays. If we talk about how the laws are gonna impact women, then first of all, there has been this feminization of farm work, which has happened in India over a period of time, there are a couple of reasons for that to happen. First one is that men have moved to the urban spaces to work. So women are left behind and they are doing the farm labor majorly. The second one is the rampant suicide rates among the farmers in India. The situation is such that in the last 25 years, 350,000 farmers have committed suicides so far. So the left behinds are again women who are looking after these farms, and they end up with small and marginal land holdings, which means, and why? Because they don't have any kind of loan waiver facilities given to them by the government already. So to get rid of the loans, they get rid of some of the land and they end up with the smaller land holdings as compared to the other families who are owning land. So there are these women only owners of the land holdings. And most of these women are pushed to look after the farms. They are, because of some sort of a tragedy, they are not literate as such. So they have less access to resources and credit, which is extended by the government already. This situation will get, this is the current situation, and it will get exacerbated if the laws come in, because first of all, in the contract farming, there is going to be a rampant landlessness and destitution. And that is because there is no legal recourse with these big corporates. And if you look at the power difference of a woman, a marginal landholding owning woman fighting a big corporation, it is a huge power difference already. And the law doesn't give a legal resource. It just does the lip service of giving the recourse, but there isn't a recourse. You can't take the corporation to the court. The court can, however, take you to the corporation can, however, take you to the court. So it's a one-way contract. The legality is only one way, and it's already crooked in its nature. So when this will come up to a woman, I personally feel like it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you won't be able to compete with them. You won't be able to take them to the court. You have no legal recourse. Doesn't matter what your gender is, but still, because there is a way in which the society is stacked, so women are going to bear a greater brunt of what will happen if the contract farming comes into play. Then Modi government is in the past few years, these governments came over, even the Congress government, they talked a lot about digitizing the economy, digitizing the basic systems. And those work if you have literate population, those work if you already have the basic amenities in place. But for the digital platforms to work, you need to have certain other infrastructure in place, which means that women, first of all, should be literate, and then they should have a computer, and then they should know how to use that computer, and they should have access to the internet. They don't have access to the basic facilities like toilets and water. How are you supposed to, just suppose that they will have this internet and they will be using the e-Mandi systems. It sounds really, really ridiculous when the government talks about e-Mandi systems. Oh, from the comfort of your house, you can sell your stuff. Well, no, it's not going to happen. So there is another kind of resource imbalance that's going to happen if the e-Mandis come into play. And if we talk about the Dalit farm labor, then a lot of automation and mechanization has already happened in the farm work. So there is already lesser labor that they are doing in the villages. There was time when the harvest season was the season they used to go and do this farm labor work. But now all that harvesting thing is, there are machines which have replaced them. And now the only 2 seasons when they get to do some sort of farm labor is paddy sowing and picking cotton or picking some other kind of crop. So what will happen if we will have big farms is that these Dalit farm labor women won't be getting enough labor. And there is already pay parity when it comes to how much they are getting paid for their labor on the farm. They are getting 30% lesser pay as compared to a man laborer. So that is going to impact them also. And if we talk about how when the APMCs will be dissolved, that dissolution will ultimately impact how the government procures the crop, the grain, and gives it at a regulated prices to the people who are in need. That won't happen anymore then. That will be stopped, which means that people who really need access to food will be thrown further into poverty and malnutrition. When malnutrition happens in a family, or let's say there is low family income, because you're not even getting the fair prices for your crop, then APMCs are dissolved. There is no, you can't buy grain on regulated prices. What happens within a family is that the first person who gets affected by all of this is the education of the women. They won't be getting educated anymore. And then it is going to be no jobs for them, no education, no job. They are going to do the labor work all lifelong, which means they will be subject to more brutality by the upper classes. The women will become more prone to that.
And Jeet, you've got 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay? 4
Yes,
minutes.
yes, I'm winding up. Thank you for that. And then they will have no agency. And then they will have malnutrition because it's the male members who should be fed first and women later. And then health services, they will have less access to that. They will be the second-class citizens within the family who won't be getting all of these services because the family income has dropped, because APMCs have dissolved, because the contract farming has come in. Overall, the situation for men and women will become more, they will become more destitute, but women more so.
Okay. Sangeeta, thank you very much for that. I've got one question if I can ask you, and then we can move on. Yep. You mentioned the role of internet and online and how that would disadvantage many of the farmers. I don't know if you know, recently Naomi Klein wrote an article, it was published in The Guardian, where she said how big tech is working with the government in this nexus between corporates, big tech and the government. And I'll quote from her article and you can comment. He says, this is a nexus between an increasingly oppressive, anti-democratic Hindutva nationalist government and the Silicon Valley companies whose tools and platforms are becoming the primary means for government forces to incite hatred against minorities and critics, and for the police to ensnare peaceful activists like Disha Ravi and also Nodeep Kaur. And also this third dimension, which is the corporates now, capturing some of those markets. Do you think that this is part of the problem?
This is a big part of the problem. I come from big tech, and this is what I think that they have been doing. We need to look at the United States also, where now Bill Gates is the biggest, he is the biggest farmer there because he owns the biggest land holding in the United States. And there are other big, biggies who are doing the same. And big tech has actually been automating everything. They have been mechanizing everything, not just in agriculture and farming, but also in the corporate sector, where they just want to have some systems do things so that they can replace people. Okay. And that is because they don't want to give, because the systems or machines are not going to ask for any kind of democratic rights. So it's better to replace people, because people ask for rights and they strike and they go on protest. So I think it's basically another structure to shun people out of their rights and make them more destitute, so that they don't protest but simply ask for food and give votes for the basic amenities.
Thank you, Sanjeet. I'm going to hand over to Majid, but just before that, I'd just like to comment on this, because as trade unionists, we will know that the history of the trade union movement has also been a struggle against technology and capital, and how capital and technology works together to remove labor rights, really. And I mean, in some senses, the issue isn't that we should stop technology, because to some extent that's never happened in history. It's the pace of change. That's the issue, isn't it? That will destroy not only communities, but whole states, possibly thousands of people. I mean, if you look in the UK and in the industrialized West, the Industrial Revolution happened over tens of years, hundreds of years. But what's happening in India is it's happening within a few years. And that's the real tragedy, isn't it, Sanjeet? That sense of pace of change.
I agree with you. Yes.
Okay. And so Majita, I'm going to hand back to you, because for our next speaker of Neetji.
Thank you, Sanjeet. And I would just also add, like Modi is willing to bring this change overnight. We are talking about years. Now we have Ramneet Brad. He belongs to BKU Qadian. So he has 10 minutes. And he is the spokesperson from Qadian Union.
Thank you so much, sir. It is my always pleasure to connect with you people and explain the actual problems that farmers are facing. Like last time I came, I was at Delhi border that time, and I showed each and everyone the live pictures, how we are facing these human rights violations, where we are staying, and what are the actual conditions of the farmers in the tents and the surroundings, and how's the water over there, and sewerage outlets, everything I showed you. This time my topic is about how these farm bills will affect the farmers after they are being implemented. Let me, like my friend Mohinder Singh already explained you about the bills and what are human rights violation, and even Sangeet Toor has explained something about how women gonna be affected by these bills. So let me give you a few examples so that each and everyone should understand how these bills gonna be affected. Take example of Bihar. They are saying that APMC it will not be abolished. Only a parallel market will be created, so that a farmer in Punjab and other states can sell his crops in the private market, and he can get rid of the commission that is being paid to these people, the intermediates, the commission agents. But let me give you an example of Bihar. In 2006, APMC was abolished in Bihar. And what is the condition of a Bihar farmer? So MSP of paddy and this wheat, it's almost 1900 in Punjab and Haryana and Eastern UP. And what Bihar farmer is getting, only 1100 to 1400. So he's losing almost 500 per quintal on his produce. So his condition is such, he comes to Punjab for labor thing, in spite of having land holding of even 5 acres, even 10 acres. So this again, this situation gonna be, you will see same situation in other parts of the country if these APMCs are being abolished. So let me tell you how these APMC will be abolished. Like when a parallel market is it comes up with a parallel market. So farmer will be, these markets gonna be lucrative. Like the one thing they did with BSNL, they basically slaughter all everything that the government is having. Like Jio has taken over it, and Jio is having the best towers right now. Earlier it was BSNL. So slowly, day by day, BSNL was slaughtered just to favor the people of Reliance or the Jio people. If more offers were given initially, but now we are being like they are dominating in the market. We are forced to take their SIMs and use their phones. So another example is MSP. MSP is being announced for 23 crops in India, but it in like for example paddy, it is being only given in Punjab, Haryana, and Eastern UP. Rest, no state is getting MSP. They are forced to sell their crop to private people on a very lower price. Between there were few studies conducted by different institutes. There was a study by let me give you details of the study. Study was conducted by Economic Survey in 2016. The study came up with in 17 states, the income of a farmer is 20,000 per year. It's almost 230 pounds per year, and almost 20 pounds are a month. You can't even raise a cow in 20 pounds a month. How can a farmer raise his family in 20 pounds a month? So this is the income of a farmer. It was a study conducted by, another study was conducted by OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, with the help of New Delhi think tank, that between 2010 and 2016, Indian farmers lost almost 45 lakh crores in farm incomes because they were not paid according to the MSP. Then there is a study by United Nations that between 1980s to 2000s, agri income remain same. Because the inflation is growing day by day, agri income is same for the farmer. Like a farmer earlier, if he was earning 100 rupees, now he is just getting 65 out of it. So these are the things like day by day. Now, if these now farmers are fearing that if these bills are come into implementation, these laws will snatch from them each and everything, whatever they are getting. Another study by PAU Ludhiana and Guru Nanak Dev University Amritsar, that between 2000 and 2015, 16,600 farmers and farm workers committed suicide. Total debt on a farmer household is 1 lakh crore. So if a farmer, like pick any newspaper every day in India, you will find 1 or 2 farmers have committed suicide, but nobody is like worried about them. They are worried about bigger corporates. 86% of the farmers are below, they are having below 5 to 6 acres of land, and they are just surviving on these lands. And even let me tell you the example of Swaminathan report. He discussed in the report that no one has used the family labor inputs in the while calculating the farmer income. So even if a farmer is working on his fields, his whole family is working, like his women are working inside the house so that he gets food, and they are working back and well by like taking care of these animals they are having and everything. So these things were not included while calculating the farmer income. Another thing,
you've got 4 minutes left.
Yes. So what will happen when these laws are being implemented? They will totally control from the kitchen to the farm. So whosoever is there, like there is a pesticide people, there are people who sell seeds, they are small transporter. So whenever a corporate takeover is there, they take control from the kitchen to the farm, each and every, even the retail, wholesale. So everyone who is associated with this business of farming, they will be, their family will be, they will be suffering. And let me give you example of United Nations. These bills are basically borrowed from United Nations. United Nations came up with these bills almost 6-7 decades ago. But right now in 2020, 425 billion bankruptcy on US farmers. If these bills are so good, why the farmers are bankrupt over there? Rural America rate of suicide is 45% higher than urban America. small farmers are disappearing in US. Only we can see 1.5 population of the farming is there because there is no MSP, no APMC. But another example is of subsidies. Still, US is pumping in a lot of subsidy for its farmers. Like the US farmer is getting almost 62,000 US dollar per year for this subsidy. But what Indian farmer is getting just 6,000 rupees a year. That's just a peanuts, we can say. Now, like example of what these there are another examples which I can tell you that these bills will.
Ravneet, you need to sum up now. Yes, I've got a question as well for you, but if you could just sum up now.
Okay. So these bills will not only harm farmers, these bills will harm the total economy of the country, because farming is the backbone of economy, especially of the states like Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. So these bills will harm each and every section of the society.
Thank you. Just two questions for you, Ravneet. One from on the call in the discussion board, which is, why can't because these are human rights issues, why can't the Supreme Court intervene, or even UN? That's one question. But the other one, which is more what Modi and his supporters are arguing, that the status quo, which you've described, is leading to massive suicide rates, and that they actually wanting to restructure the whole sector in order that those farmers can get new forms of employment, and that this has happened the world over. What would you say to those 2 points?
So let me tell you about the suicide thing first. The government, see, we need reforms to come up with all these suicides to increase the farmers' income. But what they are doing is they are snatching our farms and giving it to a corporate sector, and we will be like we will be not doing anything. Already the country is having a lot of people who don't have jobs and everything. If farming sector is handling few of them, and what will they do after their farms are being snatched? They're gonna be very free. So slowly and deliberately, each and every farmer is forced to commit suicide in coming days if these bills are being implemented.
And what about the UN and the Supreme Court on the human rights question? Because if you say this is a genocide, in effect, it's a genocide, then why can't the UN or the Supreme Court intervene?
See, we have requested Supreme Court to intervene, and even I think the people from your community from London, they have put up an application with United Nations, but still we are waiting for these results. There is no conversation we have received from these institutes.
Thank you very much. Majid, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, I'd just like Ravneet to explain a little bit APMC and MSP, because people may not know what these terms are.
Sure,
just
sir.
Very brief.
APMC is Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee. So it is a place where farmers like harvest their crop and they go to the market and they sell there. And already a pre-price is decided. Like by maize, you're gonna sell, you will get this price, and for wheat you will get this price, and for paddy you will get this price. So it is decided on the day one. Like the person who is working, his salary is decided beforehand, not after working for 30 days. You will see whether we will pay him this much or that much. So APMC is a government control sector, and already the amount is fixed. The farmer will get this much, not below than that.
Okay.
And second thing is MSP. MSP is minimum selling price. So farmer will get minimum selling price. This is the price. Like for minimum 1900 is the price for paddy. No one gonna pay him less than 1900. But if these are being abolished, this APMC, then a private player will take over and he'll decide the price by himself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for keeping it. We're going to go to Claire now, Claire Baker, who is actually the international officer for Unite. And I know that, Claire, you've been very active in terms of Kurdish people's rights and other groups as well. So thank you for joining us. So you've got 10 minutes maximum. But if you could stop at 8 minutes, then we can ask you maybe a question as well. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Many thanks, Gurnam, Manjit, Mukesh and Raj, and thank you for the branch for inviting me to this meeting today. It really is a privilege to be here with you and great to be with people from India directly and from people around the globe. I'm here today to speak really on Unite's international work in relation to India and the wider solidarity movement that we work in. We've got a long history of solidarity with workers and oppressed people from around the world, and we're at the forefront of advocating, advancing the cause for these oppressed people, not just within the UK trade union movement, but within the European and global trade union federations that Unite affiliates to. Unfortunately, at the moment, there are many challenges that we face in our work on global solidarity, especially with the rise of nationalism, the rise of the far right and the pandemic. But the fundamental principles that Unite believes in for all people of human rights, worker rights, equality, social justice, and democracy means that we can't stand back and be silent when it is clear that for whatever reason, be it their race, their ethnicity, their creed, their politics, their union membership, or their land, people across the world are repressed, enslaved, occupied, jailed, or killed. And many of these people are targeted by their governments and in turn by global capital, specifically because of their land, either for what can be grown on it or what can be taken from under it. From farmers in Colombia, olive growers in Palestine, the people of North Syria living over those great oil fields, to the people of Western Sahara living over great mineral wealth. All have been displaced, attacked, occupied, or murdered by their own governments, aggressive external regimes, or their paramilitary proxies for power, for corporate interest, and for wealth.
Got there, that's it. No, it's all right. You can...
Sorry?
Sorry, no.
Okay, so the situation facing Indian farmers is no different. Here too, we have their own government attempting to control the land for the benefit of big business and for the wealthy of the minority, with the people who live and work on the land suffering. So it's important for us as a union to also remember that the farmers' protests were at the peak of a year of unrelenting attacks on all working people and civil society in India by the Modi government. In late 2020, the global trade union movement was already taking part in solidarity actions for Indian trade union colleagues over the opportunistic attacks on workers' rights by the Modi government through the pandemic itself. And during last year's pandemic, the Indian fragile labour market regulatory framework was exposed, and the poor pandemic responses by the Modi government, as you know, had a devastating impact on working people. And during the lockdown, when hundreds and thousands of workers lost their livelihood, they also suffered while walking back to their homes in the countryside from the Indian cities. And when those factories resumed operations, there has been a continuous series of industrial accidents killing many, many workers. So the opportunistic anti-worker changes to the Indian labour law enacted during the pandemic has undermined international labour standards, fundamental principles and rights at work, and the social justice that was promoted in previous Indian labour laws. The changes have had a negative impact on freedom of association, collective bargaining and trade union rights, including the right to strike. These labour laws will deny millions of workers fundamental worker rights, social security and protection. And the changes to the farm laws, which we're all aware of, and the subsequent protests, you know, the largest in human history, in November really then showed that the Indian government was determined to attack the working class across the country. Unite itself began to reach out directly to various Indian trade unions and through the TUC and some of the federations to which we affiliate to offer our solidarity and help to the unions there. We began to use our social media and our online presence to highlight the situation, and we pressed other global federations to speak out in support of the protesters. What was very apparent was how the Indian trade unions cut across political differences and formed a united platform of struggle against the attacks on all the working class. You know, and as was pointed out by previous speakers, with women at the forefront. And Unite, along with obviously a growing amount of people around the world, admired that courage of the Indian farmers, the workers and the unions all standing together. However, as you have just said, it was well accepted that the sector was not perfect before the new laws were introduced. And as Ravneet has just been saying, you know, more than 60% of India's 1.3 billion people depend on the sector for their livelihoods, despite only accounting for around 15% of the economy. And put simply, you know, that the majority of India's farmers are desperately poor. And the suicide rates that you've been talking about because of the endemic debt within the sector is really high. So those laws that they're trying to introduce strip away already those scant state support for the farmers and leave the Indian agriculture wide open for that private investment, and will only make the dire situation much worse for millions of people across India in favour of capital and big business. And also, as you all will probably be aware, that millions are also reliant on the food welfare programme, and these people will too be severely affected by the new laws. So Unite is supporting the unions in demanding that the laws be repealed and that the system is reformed as a whole to support and improve the lives of the workers, the farmers and the poor of India. However, the route of private investment and corporatisation of the Modi government has taken under the guise of, you know, this driving of growth and investment will only benefit corporate interests and perpetuate the informality and inequality in India. In the UK, we need to be extremely vigilant of our own government's desperate need for trade deals at all costs, with both the Prime Minister and Dominic Raab taking part in meetings already with the Indian government to discuss a trade deal. The media and the government have been almost silent on the situation, and we need to ensure that as a movement, we need to renew our demand that the UK should not be making trade deals with countries which abuse civil, human and worker rights. And we need to use our global strength to make sure that the Indian farmers are allowed to protest in peace and that the rights and livelihoods of the Indian farmers are not sacrificed for corporate greed. The Indian trade union movements and the farmers' courage has been extraordinary. They've faced extreme repression throughout most of last year and into this year. The violent reaction to the protests themselves, the disappearances of protesters, the surveillance of trade union leaders, the closing down of communications, and the continuous crackdown on civil society as a whole. And Unite will continue to stand with the Indian farmers in their continued struggle and with the working class across all of India in their fight for dignity and decent work and their right to organise. So I'll leave it there because obviously a lot more people have a lot more expertise than me, but thank you again for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. There's just a couple of points in the discussion forum that I'd like to throw at you. One is from Charles Lambos and also from Balavinder Rana. Both of them are making a similar point, is that they're saying that this is essentially a political, economic and social struggle, and therefore going down the human rights angle might not be that fruitful, that what we really need to do is build an international workers movement. And in fact, what we're seeing with the farmers is, in essence, the workers and the farmers and the laborers of India now trying to fight the BJP as a political movement. What do you say about that?
Well, you know, human rights are worker rights and women's rights are human rights, and all these things that, you know, the right to protest, the in peace, the right to organize, all these things come under human rights. So human rights is the thing that goes over the top of this, the right to be able to eat, you know, have water, have food, you know, it's all a human right. So you know, they're all different strands off of it when we're talking about how to deal with it. Yeah, we need to go down the political road. We need to put pressure on politically. And I think that's where we can do that within, you know, put pressure on our own government about trade deals and stuff like that in the UK itself. Supporting the trade unions, absolutely, you know, through the various federations and directly, I think is very important too.
Doesn't bother me.
Thank you very much for that. And I think that the things that we can do is through our own trade unions, we can actually do boycotts and things like that. We can actually try to boycott goods. And there's a strong call for a general strike in India. Do you think that's something that the UK trade union movement would support, the call for a general strike?
Yeah, we would, if that was what the Indian trade unions wanted and thought was the best way to go, absolutely would support a general strike. And we've done that in other countries.
Sorry,
yeah, Raj, you want to
host, could I ask the brother Gyani to come in? He's from the United Regional Committee up in Cambridge, because he got a similar point of view, the question you asked.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Claire, once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Aslan, you've got a couple of minutes if you want to come in. A few minutes.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me all?
Yes, yes.
Hi, good afternoon. Hi, I'm Arsalan Ghani. I'm affiliated with Unite the Union. I have been publishing articles on Indian farmer movement in Marxist.com. I'm a Marxist and a member of International Marxist Tendency. I have been watching closely this whole movement. And colleagues and speakers all here have highlighted the problem faced by farmers as a result of the laws. I would like to explain a bit about the background quickly before I get to the point. I think it's rightly said that more than 80% of Indian farmers are classified as small land holding, less than 2 acres. And it's a research that in order to sustain farmers and their family to make a barely living, they have to have more than 2 hectares. And this is research, meaning that all these farmers and their families are living on the verge of destitution. A small climate event or a market shock devastates the farmers, and then we see that it's not surprise 1,000 farmers are having suicide every month in India. 1,000, this is the figure. And farmers, they have to buy high-priced inputs for their farms. And majority of all inputs, seeds, tractors, pesticides, fuel, you name it, they are all owned by multinational corporations, which are like, coming in India to corporatize all the agriculture sector, which is supported by Modi. And farmers, they have to take loan to cover the cost of the inputs. And you see the whole loan sharks and all this business of loans in the farmers community there. Outside, whether they are operating inside or outside the mandi system, every farmer is indebted a huge amount of money. And all these loans are given often by banks.
Aslan, if I can come in there, I think you've really clear. I mean, we've covered some of the problem, and you've said that the status quo itself is killing farmers. Yeah. So what is the solution? I mean, in a sense, that's what we're all fighting for.
Yeah. So for the solution, I think what I would approach in this way as the privatization and corporatization of the Indian agriculture. That is the thing in which BJP government is bringing in multinational corporation and in collaboration with the local Indian capitalists like Adani, Ambani, and that's where this problem lies in. And the farmer struggle, on the surface you can see it's a struggle against the farm law, but on a general character it's a struggle against the corporatization of Indian agriculture. And there's a criminal role of all these parties which are siding with the BJP that bring in this all farm laws. But then we see that it's not happened, this corporatization not happened even in BJP era. In the previous era of previous governments, they also brought in all this multinational corporation and they sold all, this APMC laws in the previous government. And previous regimes.
We're going to have to round up. I think we're covering some ground that we've already covered.
Yeah.
We have a number of questions, but maybe you can respond to some of the questions. So thank you very much for your input. We're going to move.
Just 1 minute. I would
last sentence.
Okay, yes. So I think the only way we need to coordinated farmers and workers and to go for an indefinite general strike. That's the demand which we have to put down here. 1 day strike is not enough because we see 250 million people come out. We have 3 Bharat Bandh, 2 Bharat Bandh, and one is coming on 26th of March. 1 day strike is not enough. We need a coordinated workers and farmers to go on an indefinite general strike unless the laws are not repealed, and also the government and the system has to go. So indefinite general strike, and that is what Unite and all international solidarity should push forward and support this the call for an indefinite general strike. Already there is a mood there.
Thank you. That's very clear, and I think that we should really build solidarity for a general strike. Can we move on now to our next speaker? We've got George Atwal. George is from the Bakers, Food and Allied Workers Union. George, just 4 minutes because we are running behind time. So if you can just stay within 4 minutes, some key bullet points, and don't cover what's already been said.
Right.
Thank you for the invite today. We bring solidarity from the Bakers through our workers' union. We're a union that was set up in 1847, and we want to represent the food workers in the United Kingdom and the farming industry. Obviously, we took our concerns, how our members and our sister unions have been treated in India. Our members in the United Kingdom have took concerns, looking at the TV and the press coverages, what's going around and the violations, what's happening in India at present moment under Modi's government. What we will be doing as a trade union from our sector, we will build in a larger movement. After the lockdown, we will be linking up with the Trade Union Council, the TUC. Also, we'll be bringing in resolutions to the Black Workers Conference this year. We will be linking up with the MPs, the councillors, the Shop Stewards Network. And also, when over 100,000 or thousands of our members signed in the petition for a debate in Parliament this week. And that from the back, when you look at the debate, it was a brilliant debate. We put the clear message to the the government who's in charge at present moment. But as you can see from the the debate, Modi's government has called in a convoy, a government convoy from United Kingdom to go to India and listen to that. But Modi's government can sugarcoat our government and our ministers that in Parliament at present moment, but they will not sugarcoat our trade union movements and our members. We will still demonstrate what's happening to our brothers and sisters under the the regime of Modi government and the laws that have been enforced on us, and also the freedom of press, sanitary requirements to our trade union movements and our members and our farmers and our families that protesting. We know there's democracy in India is in danger with Modi's government, and obviously we're going to put a stop to this. And obviously we have written a letter to the Prime Minister and Dominic. We made a clear message to them. Stop clapping and start looking at trade deals. Look at the violations first. What is Modi's government's doing to our farmers in India and our families, and listen to the public that has put this government in power. And if they don't, we will rally in every little city and in London and demonstrate. We will be heard loud and clear. Once a clear message from the trade union, from the bakers through our workers union is, we do listen to our members' concerns. Majority are Asian workers in our food sectors, and they've got families, they've got land back home, they've got really close links. And if this government and our MPs don't listen to us, we will demonstrate. And on this sector, the final point, what we say is, attack on one working class member is attack on all. So coming to the sector, would the Bakers Union support if there's a general strike in India? Yes, we will. We will stand forefront of the trade union movement and forefront from day one since action being taken by the biggest the strike in India, over 250,000 workers. We give our full solidarity, full support from the bakers with our workers union and our members. Thank you.
Thank you, George, very much. And thank you for raising the issue about the trade deal that Boris Johnson's been negotiating. I don't know if anybody heard the debate in Parliament last week and where Theresa Villiers spoke to give the government position. And it was a disgraceful response. In fact, it wasn't her words. It was the words of Modi. It's almost as if what she said was scripted by the Indian embassy in London. And so it's clearly an issue that they are selling human rights, workers' rights for these trade deals for the corporates. And I think we need to keep a close eye on that. So now we've got our last speaker on our list, unless I've missed anybody. And then we've got time for questions. So we've got Sabrina Espelata, who is from the War on Want organization. So you've got up to 5 minutes, 4 minutes, and then we might have a question for you as well, Sabrina.
That's to be quick. Well, my name is Sabrina. I work at War on Want as a senior programs officer, and I'm working particularly in my area on the topics of food sovereignty with partners all around the world, from South Asia to Latin America to Sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa. And we believe at War on Want that food sovereignty is a vital and a practical alternative to what is now a failed food system, and that is already being used by many farmers from around the world to respond to multiple crises of climate, poverty, hunger, and malnutrition. Because food sovereignty enables communities to grow the food that is appropriate for their lands and for their culture. A paradox of this moment, historical moment, is that even though family farming feeds 80% of the world in value terms, only 25% of the world's agricultural land, their voices are not properly represented. So what happens is that when the farmers and the union organized this national strike in November to repeal the agricultural laws, the general secretaries of 17 major unions in the UK signed a statement of solidarity together with the Trade Union Congress and War on Want. We also launched a supporters action through our members and networks, and to send emails to the Indian High Commission in the UK, urging the Indian government to respect the farmers' demands. We had more than 4,100 people who took action and emailed to the Indian High Commission. So why we wanted to support and give voice to the farmers' protest from our side is because we believe that this is a very important struggle, and we need to show international solidarity on all fronts, because this is a historical mobilization, mobilized more than 250 million people from the north to the south of the country. And also because what is happening in India right now is like a symptom of a very worrying global trend. And we see this with the work of the farmers organization and movements that go from South Asia up to Latin America, and things like contract farming, land grabbing, export-oriented industrial agriculture with heavy use and regulated agrochemicals. This is the model that we have to put into discussion. And this is a global crisis, which has gotten even worse since 2008, because land has become a commodity for speculation in the international stock markets. And corporate interests are taking over our food systems, and they're exerting their influence on agricultural policies at all levels. And somebody also mentioned the role of tech corporations, and in India is becoming a very worrying thing. And this is happening around the world, and it's affecting family farmers, who are the ones who feed the world. There are farmers and rural communities that have been suffering the power of these agribusinesses in their daily livelihoods for decades. And you can see now the effects. For example, no decision of what to produce, those who controls the seeds, the control of the supply chains on a national level, and the condition of international free trade agreements, then the deaths of the farmers, not only by suicide, but also exposure to unregulated agrotoxics and agrochemicals, the lack of power in negotiating fair price, because the supply chain is controlled by intermediaries, but also because, and take the biggest slice of the cake, but also because the minimum price is not guaranteed. So this has become even worse during the pandemic. In some countries, for example, farmers' organizations have denounced that markets, open air markets, have been closed by the governments, and green lights to large retailers and supermarkets to continue business as usual. So corporation has also taken very important places of decision-making areas, like the Food System Summit that will take place in September. And it's something that we should keep an eye on, because they have signed an agreement with the World Economic Forum. But at the same time, this crisis is global because everything is interconnected and everyone has the right to a healthy and appropriate food.
Can you
And
conclude
so,
now, Sabrina? Can you,
sorry?
wrap up? Yeah, wrap up.
Yeah, wrapping up, 30 seconds. So basically what these farmers is teaching us is that this global crisis needs to be addressed through an internationalist response and perspective, and with the solidarity of different sectors of the society. And so we are here to show our international solidarity, and because the crisis is global, and so should be our resistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sabrina, so much for that. I'm just going to say one thing, and I'm going to hand over to Mukesh, and we're going to have about 25 minutes for some of the questions. First thing is, at the peak, we had over 75 people on this call, so that is fantastic. So, you know, big round of applause to everybody who joined in. I think this is...
Actually, it was 79 sessions.
Yeah, 79.
79 sessions, of which some of them had 2 or 3 people in the room. So
that's phenomenal.
So that means we probably had nearly 90 people in total.
Mukesh, I actually saw 81 at one stage.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so a couple between friends is fine.
And thank you for
I think it's successful in that sense.
Yeah. And thank you for those of you who are still with us. We I say we
are doing well. We are doing well.
Okay.
Manjeet, Gopal, there's another guest waiting in the waiting room. Can somebody let them in?
I've already let them in.
Could he have a couple of minutes? Because he's
I'm going to start the question and answer session, and he can be part of the.
Well, now he can just give a.
He can be part of the panel, Raj. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one thing before I hand over to you, Mukesh. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that in the way in which the farmers and the workers in around Delhi and India are taking direct action, direct peaceful action. I think that we need in the UK also to think about what direct peaceful action we can take.
Yes.
Particularly because of this trade deal that is being negotiated, because that trade deal could actually lead to the deaths of tens of thousands of people. Yeah. So I'm proposing that we have some kind of occupation, once the COVID virus has ended, that in London, maybe outside 10 Downing Street, we've done it before, we did a 100-day occupation, that we actually have a protest there, but we can discuss that in future meetings. Over to you, Mukesh.
Thank you.
Okay. We are not many people are aware of all that, of the contract.
Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe that's something we can pick up at the future meeting, find out what's actually behind this trade deal.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to try and bring in the panels. I'm just trying to add in a few of the people, so that way as many as I can get onto the picture. Okay, all right, I can only get the 4 of you in there. Sabrina, are you okay to take questions as well? Yep, okay, thank you. All right, so the first question, let's have a look. Okay, the first question, guys, and I've got is, how are the farmers managing on a daily basis for food, sanitation, and water? Would
Sangeeta, you're on the ground. You're on the ground.
You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes. So as in food, we have the community kitchens. A lot of people, they just volunteer to give food, prepare food. There are big organizations who have jumped in to provide food. Water was the last time I went there, it was still provided by the Delhi administration, the drinking water. Fresh milk and fresh produce is provided by the farmers of Haryana. For sanitation, it is still a huge problem, but we at least now have some sort of really small cubes where people can go. But for taking a bath or something, there still is a huge problem of that. And we have a big problem which relates to the garbage. So we don't have a waste management system there. What I have seen our people doing is they have like this, a bowl, a bata in their, pocket of their kurta, which is the traditional dress. They just take it out, they eat and they drink, they use it for eating and drinking. And it's a good way of controlling the waste. And we have been trying to do the same after them.
Okay, thank you for that. Now the next question is, would the creation of cooperatives give the smaller farmers more strength, i.e. strength in numbers like the cooperative movement does? Can I ask Mahinder, as you're a legal eagle, would you like to try and respond to that question from the audience? You need to unmute yourself.
As far as the formation of cooperatives is concerned, I don't think it will be a good alternative. We have already seen that in the case of USSR. The cooperative farms in the USSR proved to be a great failure, because when more people join together, none of them considers its duty to do the job properly, because he knows that my share is very negligible out of that. When he is taking the material from the farm to the market, I'm just giving an example. If some of the wheat is flowing from the truck, he will not stop in the cold or in the rain to stop that flowing, because he knows my share is very little in that. Similarly, in other things also, the cooperative doesn't work properly, simply for the reason that the person who is doing that particular job knows that my share is very little. So I don't think cooperatives will be a very effective thing. The cooperative thing can be in other things. That can be in the, that they can be shareholders in processing business, not in farming, but in processing. That has to be controlled by experts and other workers, and only to be looked after by the elected members from the community. In that purpose, we can have them, the cooperatives, but not in farming.
Okay.
Okay, Gurnam, you have a question before.
Yeah, this is for Arsalan, if I can ask you. It's more of a political one. Given that you're a kind of Marxist, you might have a good answer.
For me, I'm not a Marxist.
No, Arsalan.
Okay.
Balwinder said, he said, consider if the farmers' struggle failed, and he's suggesting, Balwinder, that fascism could really become, take hold on the BJP RSS, and this might result in other extremist forces unleashed, and that could create great kind of damage to the society. What is your view about that, Arsalan?
Civil war.
Can you hear me?
Hanji.
Could I please ask members to refrain from unmuting themselves, because it means that we can only do this properly if it's in a controlled manner. So if you've got a question, put it into the chat box and I'll try and come to it. Thank you.
Hanji Aslan.
I think when we talk about fascism, so we have to understand that the key basis for fascism is that the small businesses who are having a national character, and also disintegration of trade unions. Right now in India, there are big businesses popping up, which are mostly linked to multinational capital. And secondly, they are very, very much organized workers and trade unions in India. So the question of fascism being prevailed in India is out of question. However, Modi, BJP and RSS, they are now capitalizing the situation and trying to attack, the farmers on all borders, which we see situation where the bricks are thrown and also people are beaten up. Police is also used, state is also used. But I think if the movement failed, it will impact economically, because economically, what we see that because of poverty, disease, suicides, there will be thousands of deaths that will surpass any kind of, you can say small fascism or any kind of activity which is done by RSS or BJP goons that will surpass them. So these deaths will be more concerned than what the attacks by the RSS and BJP will be there. So there will be a huge catastrophic situation with respect to economic situation, you know. And when we talk about fascism, though, I don't think so right now. There will be a fascism in India. There are organized trade unions, and there is very much solidarity, international solidarity linkages created by working class of Britain, of America, of Canada. So I think that will be a very, very difficult situation.
Thank you for that response.
Gurnam,
I'm gonna-
can we ask the same question to Mahinder? Maybe another aspect he has.
Okay, in a second. I just want to, we have one of our guests and who can give us some response as well. We have Gurinder Jasan, who's from our from the NEC, from the Labour Party. Would you like to give a couple of comments, because you came in quite late, and I'm you know, I respect you and always follow you and say nice things about you on my Facebook page. So can you say a couple of nice things, or just comment on what you've heard so far when you've come in, please?
Thank you.
A couple of minutes.
Thank you, Mukesh. I mean, first of all, apologies. We really do want to apologise. So I'm a member of the Labour Party National Executive Committee. We had today is a day when we have our subcommittee. So we had a disputes committee this morning. We're in the middle of our organisation subcommittee, and so we're just broken for a break. And I promise Raj that I will make, I do want to come along and show solidarity with what you're doing, and also, you know, bring the best wishes of the Labour Party and to the cause. And also, I myself am a Unite member. I'm secretary of the 6090 branch, that's in West Midlands Sandwell local area branch. So best, you know, good wishes from my branch also, and also I saw. That George Atwell from the Bakers Union is part of the coordinators of this campaign. So he's from the West Midlands, so somebody from my region as well. I mean, I haven't heard a lot of the debate, but I was really impressed by the speakers you've got today. I suppose what I did want to say is from the Labour Party perspective, and you know, we absolutely, the importance of human rights across the globe is something that's dear to all of us, and there is no way that human rights should ever be compromised wherever they've been breached in the world. And you know, the United Kingdom has been a home for a lot of our communities over several generations now, and those links that we still hold with our home countries are still very strong. And you know, I myself, you know, still consider myself of Indian heritage. I was born here. Still, you know, the Punjab is very close to us. So, and when we go back there, you know, we still go to the Punjab. We still go to farm areas. Our families are still farmers. So their concerns are our concerns, and their troubles are our troubles. And you know, there isn't any chance that we're not going to share in their struggle. And you know, I suppose the only other thing I would say is the concern. So I'm also trustee and director of Hope Not Hate, and you know, we've started looking at this as well in the context of the far right and how they are stirring up and problems, not just in India but across the globe. And you know, that we've seen examples in the UK how that some of those extremists have tried to influence the last two UK general elections, and we can't allow that to happen. And you know, at the end of the day, and I do say this proudly, you know, I'm not anti-India. You know, I certainly am not anti-India. India is a country where the Punjabis is where our gurus were born and led their life. It's so important to us. It's where our families are still now. It's where we go back to regularly. But what we are anti is some of the stuff going on there, and that's a responsibility of all of us to speak out. So I'm so pleased to see trade union colleagues and Labour colleagues on this call and being part of this. So because
Okay, got a question for you, Gurinder.
I've got a question.
Gurnam is going to ask the question.
Yeah.
Over to you, Gurnam. Ask the question of Gurinder, please.
Thanks very much for coming on, Gurinder. I know you've got to go, but really that last point that you made, there's been some concern in the community about Hindutva right-wing groups. Whether they've got large numbers or not, we don't know, but they're using social media to harass families. And there's some evidence that they're trying to go outside Gurdwaras to threaten, peaceful congregations. We had an incident in Australia, I think it was in Melbourne, where they actually attacked a Gurdwara. What can the Labour Party do about that?
So this is something, I mean, first of all, I think we need to ensure that the authorities in the UK are alive to what is going on and they're aware of what's going on. Sometimes they don't understand the nuances. That's the first thing. And secondly, then we need people to speak out against it. We need authorities in the UK to speak out against all forms of extremism. There's no space for extremism. You know, the UK is a very diverse country. And we have to be able to live with our neighbours, and even if we disagree with their views, we've got to be able to live alongside them, work alongside them, and we hope our children are able to do that, because that's we want a good future for all our children. I think at the last NEC meeting a couple of weeks ago, I did ask the leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, to take this on board. And a lot of the aspects of the farmers' dispute have been well rehearsed, and politicians are well aware of them. But this division that's been shown between different communities in the UK is really damaging for all of us. And that's something we need to shine more of a light on it. We need to make sure that the authorities are aware of it. So, the police, counter-terrorism units and people, they're regularly talking about Sikhs, but what about the Hindutva, right? Who are just using.
Well, I think it also.
That's very important.
Going to just interrupt there because I'm just mindful of the time. I have about, as I said, I've tried to capture all the questions, and I know that even if I had another 2 hours, I wouldn't be able to ask all of them. So, Gurinder, I'm going to say thank you for tuning in. Stay with us as long as you can. But I'm going to go to George next. There's a question which is, I think, quite important, especially since we've had Brexit and everything. George, the question I've got here is, do you think with the reduction in exports from India because of the farmers' plight affect the regular person in the UK in terms of food and things like that?
It can affect people if there's a reduction on food coming from India, the prices will go up. But what we got to understand, sometimes we got companies that will support the Conservative government, and do we boycott products on there? That can cost jobs, and also the supply chain of that can affect families. And what we look at is the main question is we've got to challenge the democracy and support that. Boycotting products, we tried this with Palestine, boycott products from Israel, same thing. But the answer is, if we do stop products coming from India into England, the price pinch will push up, and that puts the average working class worker in Britain today to can't buy them commodities.
Okay, thank you for that, George. Can I go to the next question? I think probably Sangeet might be able to help us on this one.
Mukesh, just 1 second. There is a question from Sarjeet Dosanjh as well. That's
well, I'm sorry, but I've got the questions in my hand, and I'm going through them just like it would be in question time. So if you don't mind, just let me finish these questions, and if we have time, and depending on the responses, we'll try and do that. So let me go to the next question. Sangeet, you've got the question. Has the Delhi local government been supporting the farmers in any way? This is the local government, not the central government. Have they been supporting the farmers?
Yes, they have been, especially in the needs of the logistical parts of those. For example, water and making the sanitation and mobile toilets available. they have been doing that. Although the role of Kejriwal is a little bit shady, but overall for the protest, they have been supportive.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much for that response. That sounds at least somebody's trying to help us locally. Okay, the next question I've got is for Mahinder. Mahinder, do you think Modi is using the farmers' suicide as a way of justification for bringing in the so-called new reform laws? Very complicated question, but I'll leave that to you.
Just repeat it clearly.
Okay, I'll repeat it again. Do you think Modi is using the farmers' suicide as a way of justification for bringing in the so-called reform laws?
He is using the farmers. Repeat the next
Yeah,
word.
the farmers' suicide. You know, we've had a high increase in the number of people who are committing suicide. So is Modi using that as a way to just implement it without disregard?
Actually, these are not reforms. Reforms are needed. We know that the farmers are not a happy lot even at this moment. So we need real reforms that needs to be the farmers to be protected. But these laws are not going to protect the farmers. These are basically made to favor the big houses, the big corporate houses, not the farmers. These will be affecting the farmers even more than the previous position. The position of the farmers will be worse, so much worse that the small farmers will have to leave farming and become farm laborers or factory workers. And the bad thing about that is that in India, the wages of unskilled labor is very low as compared to other countries. It is only about £100 per month. So the farmers in that case will have to take up to lawlessness. That will be very bad for the country if these laws are implemented. These are not for the welfare of the farmers in any case.
Okay, thank you for that, Mahinder. I've got the question now next is for Claire. That's why I've got you on the spotlight there, Claire. Question's been asked. Has Len McCluskey made a statement about what is happening in India? If yes, what is it and why isn't it available on social media?
He has taken, he's joined with the War on Want. Sabrina was talking about the 14 general secretaries who'd signed up to the War on Want statement about the farmers in India, and he is part of that joint statement from the big national trade unions. So it's all over social media, and also all on our Unite International Twitter account, and also over the internet on the Unite website. So there's lots of stuff there, and he personally has signed on to the War on Want statement. So that's it.
Thank you for that, Claire. Sabrina, I've got you on the spotlight there. Is there anything you'd like to add to Claire's comment in terms of this question about whether Len McCluskey has made the statement?
Yeah, I just wanted to paste the link to the list of signatures from our website. I'm going to paste it on the chat.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next question, I've just realized I've got 2 minutes. Here we go. What is the latest communication between the Kisan unions and the Indian government? Sangeet, would that be a good question for you or for Mahinder?
Yes, the latest communication from Modi government to the Kisan union leaders was that we are just one call away, but nobody knows which that number is. That is one call away.
Okay, Mahinder, did you want to comment at all on that at all, or are you okay with Sangeet's response?
He has simply said one thing about that he has already cleared that he says he is only one call away, but he wants that call only for one thing, about the things which he has already said. that I am not prepared to withdraw these laws. Only a few amendments can be made. If you want to discuss on that, I am one call away. Otherwise, no talk about the repeal of these laws. And without repeal of laws, these laws, there is no other substitution for that.
Okay, thank you for that. A follow-up question to both Sangeeta and Mahinder. The question being asked is, do any of you know how many meetings have taken place between the farmers and the central government?
I guess 11 rounds.
11 rounds. And they've just broken down, or have they, has any headway been made?
No, no headway. Just there was just one headway, which was that there were two bills. One was the pollution bill, where they were giving, where there were mentions of heavy fines for farmers for stubble burning. And the other one was the electricity bill. Those were not yet laws, so they took those back. That was the only headway and nothing else.
Okay. The next question, and I think, again, I'm sorry to put this on you, Sangeeta.
No
Maybe
worries.
you can help us. The question being asked is, are any of the international NGOs present, where the people are, and giving any humanitarian support? So, for example, like Oxfam or Christian Aid or Khalsa Aid or anybody like that, are they there?
Khalsa Aid is heavily present there.
Okay, and what sort of things are they doing?
They're mostly providing, for example, the living spaces, and then providing rations, all that langars that I have talked about. So they are also providing that. They have set up the medical facilities. There was also like a store that they opened for people to just come in and get the things that they need on daily basis. So they are mostly doing the things which are helpful for people on an everyday basis, like you are living in a city, and for those logistical things that you need, like store and sanitation and ration and everything, they're providing that, including bed and breakfast.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I've got to the last question, and it's 2 minutes past 5. So it really is. I mean, this is a rather sensitive question. So I've actually brought Gurpal Binning in, as he's one of our Unite colleagues. And this is an open question. Any of you can answer this. Are companies like Reliance and Tata trying to buy the small holdings through the back door? And if they are, does anyone know whether the farmers who are selling getting a market rate or an under market rate for their land which they're producing? Open question. Anyone would like to answer that one?
At present, there are not specific cases of these companies trying to purchase land. So at the moment, they will try to enter the market of purchasing the food products. And when they start purchasing those food products, agricultural products at low prices, after that, it will be a problem for the farmers. They will be very tough for them to survive in that. So after that, they will be selling the lands. And at that time, they will be the biggest purchasers of those lands. At present, there is not such situation.
Thank you for that. Sangeeta, did you want to comment on that at all in any way?
Yes, I'll just add one point, which is that we do have a precedent when a corporation comes in. For example, the builders came in and they wanted prime land, let's say around an urban area. Then the farmers are made to give up that land to the corporation who wants to build something, some buildings or residential stuff on the land. So that precedent is already set where the laws are changed for the corporations to acquire that land at a much lower rate and much easily. And the farmers don't have a legal recourse there either.
Okay, thank you for that, Sangeeta. Gurpal, you're there. Just going to ask you to unmute. with the presence that Reliance and Tata and a lot of these large Indian companies are now in the UK buying up British companies, is there anything we as Unite could do to support the farmers indirectly against Reliance or Tata or any of these other companies which go in and buy products?
I think the biggest thing probably that we as individuals can do is just not to buy the products of these companies, right? We've seen some of this in Australia. There's been some publicity about what these big organizations are trying to do there. And that has also, if you look in history a little bit, this worked in Africa, South Africa, and that was quite successful there. So I think when we even go to India and we buy these mobile chips or any of our spending, I mean, if we curtail from trying to avoid some of the perhaps the unfriendly corporates, I would say that's worth doing. But the other thing I think is, at the moment, I think what you guys are doing, like for example, this meeting, and I think generally the countries around the world, there's been a lot of publicity. I think UK has been very active, very good, and I think we've got some visits. Boris Johnson is going to India, Modi's coming down here, and I think maybe some preparation for that. And I think certainly all this pressure, this meeting, and it's been very good. This is the second of the meetings that I've seen of yours. And Unite generally has been very supportive. Our region's been very supportive. They've given written letters, which I've certainly, shipped one back to the unions there. So I think this is all good, and obviously getting under the skin of the government. That's why Modi is remarking these in his parliament, right? So I think what you guys are doing are very good.
Okay, I think on that note, as I'm sorry to everybody, I've gone 7 minutes over, but I think it's been really wonderful this afternoon. I know it's pretty late now in India, so Sangeet and Mahinder and our other friends and colleagues online, it must be coming up to about 11 o'clock where you are. Is it 11 o'clock?
10:35 here.
All right, okay. So thank you for that. So before you all disappear and we go through the final motions, I just want to personally thank my two colleagues, Manjeet Singh and Gurnam, for taking over the middle part of the event and introducing our guests. I think it's beholden on me to thank all of you for doing that, and in such a really wonderful way where I've actually only had to put two people back in the waiting room because they started doing things. So as I promised, I would try and put it in control. So two people were evicted from our event electronically. So can I thank you all? I'm going to stop there now because I'm going to hand over to Raj, because one of the things we always do at this event is actually do the parish news so that you get to know what's happening, and Raj can actually have some time as well to share with you. So thank you very much, all of you, for your attendance. Raj, over to you, my friend.
Yeah. Right. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I'd like to reinforce what the chair have said. Big thank you to Manjeet Singh and Gurnam Singh and our Unite International officer, Claire. And she's done an enormous amount of work. And as Gurpal and other people have said, behind the scene, I have worked with the regional committee and all of these colleagues. So thank you for your support. And also all the speakers that have spoken and contributed, and all the people who come down to participate. Thank you very much. And just like to say, this is not the end. This is only our second meeting. We will organize more meetings until it is one. So, I'll make that pledge. We will, but when we organize it, I will consult with my branch committee and branch officers. And I will also consult with the list of activists I have far and wide. And so the other thing, this is for the branch members. We have a formal branch meeting on the 24th, which I'll be sending out notices shortly. And anybody who is not a member, who came here as a visitor, please join Unite Community membership and be part of the struggle, not part of the, it's part of the solution, not part of the problem, which, this government have presented. And so a lot of things, community-wise, a lot of things, politically wise, a lot of things, in terms of, there is a notice, I think Chair might have forgotten, it's from Taz Salam saying, hi everybody, solidarity from Bradford bus drivers to all our brothers and sisters in the farmers struggle. I'm sorry you have to leave another meeting. So solidarity from the bus workers.
All right, thank you, Raj.
I'd like to end there.
Very good.
I think everybody, I have to, like in all these things, question time, I have to apologize because I've had to do the unenviable task of fielding the questions. And if I haven't been able to get your question, this just was too many questions and we just ran out of time. So we'll see you again soon and speak and thank all of you in attendance. And as we said, we've had over 90 people in attendance. Manjeet, was that a wave or did you want to say something?
No, it was just a wave. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for being patient and attending. Especially, we have very learned people, Claire, Gurnam Singh ji, and you and Surinder Purewal, Gurpal, and then
I think the list is endless. I think we've had a really wonderful event. And Claire, you can report back to whoever you need to report back what we're doing in West London branch. And once this lockdown is finished, then we'll get you over to come along and be a speaker. All right.
I mean, obviously, I would say just say the message from me or from all of us is for our friends in India is that we are with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So can I end there? And I'm going to do a countdown and then allow you to sign off. And good night to everybody in Canada, the US, in India,
Claire, I'll see you on the 25th.
and Malaysia.
Good night.
Good night. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to end the session now.